The Boston waterfront's a powerful magnet for economic growth, but it's also the front line of the advancing threat posed by climate change. One response to that is a new campaign by small businesses working together as the Climate Action Liaison Coalition. The campaign is called Boston Businesses Acting on Rising Seas, or Boston BARS. We'd like to welcome one of the campaign leaders, the coalition's executive director, Quinton Zondervan. Thank you very much for being with us, Quinton.
Thank you.
First of all, talk about the kinds of businesses getting into this.
Yeah, so we have a wide variety of businesses, from very small ones to very large ones, including Gentle Giant Moving Company, Next Step Living, which is more in the clean tech sector. So we have businesses across the different industries and different sizes.
Well, how about the way these businesses perceive climate change? I mean, most of us in Boston, we agree it's happening. So why are they so concerned right now?
Well, for many businesses, climate change is a real threat to their survival. And if we look at, for example, Hurricane Sandy in New York, by some estimates, 25 to 30% of small businesses that were affected by the hurricane ended up going out of business. So this is a real threat to a business operating in the Boston area.
Well, the obvious threat is that if you're close to the water, your building gets swamped and there are huge physical losses, but I guess you're thinking of some other kinds of losses too.
Yes, absolutely. So imagine that we have a 10-day heat wave in Boston and a business is not able to get their customers to come in or to get their supplies delivered. You know, that could be devastating to a small business. Now,
why would a heat wave interfere with deliveries?
Well, you know, for example, employees may not be able to come to work. You know, the road system might be tied up. There's going to be a lot of emergency vehicles activities. If the power goes out because the load is too high on the electrical grid, you know, that would interfere with our transportation system. So, you know, there's a lot of different ways that it could affect a small business.
What about your own experience in small business? What has that taught you?
Well, when I was running a small biotech a few years ago, we had Hurricane Irene come through town. And luckily we had a generator on the roof, and so we thought we were fine. And then, of course, when the power actually went out, we realized that half the circuits that were marked to be connected to the generator were not. And we had to scramble to preserve our samples. So that taught us a big lesson that we really have to prepare for these events. We can't just assume that, you know, everything will be fine.
And you sound like you're concerned about the kind of business that many people are in Boston right now. You said the biotech business, the samples that are very delicate.
Right, but that's just one example. You know, I mean, any food business would have, you know, valuable products that could spoil if the power went out for a long time. Flower shop would lose a lot of inventory if the power went out. So, you know, all kinds of businesses are affected.
By the way, we had a rehearsal for that in the Back Bay not too many years ago, right?
Right, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So what about the amount of time here to deal with this? Because everybody keeps saying that, yes, there is climate change, it's going to get worse, but not right away.
Right, it is changing already. And, you know, last year we had almost 3 heat waves in Boston. So there are changes that are happening now. But when we talk about rising seas, you know, that change is accelerating. And by the middle of the century and towards the end of the century, we could see very dramatic sea level rise, which is going to have a big impact on the city.
What about the lessons of Hurricane Sandy? Because this hit New York City and some other places to the south really hard, and they're not too far from Boston. So if you try to transpose that to Boston, what do you come out with?
Well, you know, the city of Boston has done some studies and some modeling, and, you know, you're definitely looking at several feet of water in the city, you know, inundating the tunnels. And actually, you know, Hurricane Sandy only missed Boston by a couple of hours, because even if it had stayed where it ended up hitting, if it had hit there at high tide in Boston, we would have been affected by it. So, you know, we were not that far off from being hit by Sandy.
So what can businesses acting together in your organization really do? Because what you're talking about, those are large, natural, even though somewhat human-produced forces that, you know, you can't easily deflect those.
Right, right. So a lot of it comes into preparing for these events, working together. And the most important part is really working with our government at local and state and federal levels to make sure that we're doing appropriate legal planning, regional planning, to prepare for these kind of changes. So, for example, we're supporting legislation that's in the State House right now called CAMP, which is Comprehensive Adaptation Management Planning, that is really asking the state to do some comprehensive climate change adaptation planning, which is what's needed. And small businesses can add a powerful voice to the need for this kind of legislation.
Another concern, I guess, would be the storage of data. Are you worried about that?
Yes, that is absolutely one of the problems with having servers in the basement or even at first or second floor level. Luckily, there's technical solutions now. We have the cloud, and so it's possible to address those things. But again, it has to be part of an integrated plan by the business to transition its operations and its IT infrastructure into the cloud and to prepare in general for these kind of events.
Put this in context, because the city has taken the lead with guidelines on new development. They are thinking ahead about climate change. But do you think that needs more revision, maybe with more input from the businesses, as opposed to just developers maybe?
Right, and it's also very important that we do regional and state level planning. The city of Boston and the city of Cambridge are doing some of their own climate planning, but a lot of other communities in the state are not able to do that. So we really need a state and regional plan.
Of course, the other part of the equation here is where the big things are changed. Nationwide decisions made about power plants or using other kinds of fossil fuels. Do you see your group being able to do much about that?
Absolutely. So one of the legislation that we're looking at right now is the net metering bill. And Massachusetts has actually been very progressive on transitioning to renewable energy. So as businesses, we have a lot of opportunities to install solar panels. One of our businesses, for example, is a health club in the Longfellow Club in Wayland, and they're putting in a large solar array right now. So there's a lot of opportunity for businesses to showcase the technology and to save money, and to let our elected leaders know that we really need these type of technologies, and we need the appropriate incentives and regulatory infrastructure so that we can start transitioning to renewable energy.
For all the stories about the switch to renewables here and reducing greenhouse gases, you see all these other examples of countries around the world that are going in the other direction. Maybe they're spurred by economic growth and they feel they have no choice. But do you ever get discouraged when you sense that we're still maybe losing ground?
Right. Yeah, it can be discouraging, but at the same time, you also see those countries investing in renewable technology very heavily because they recognize the danger as well. And they also have more immediate health impacts from continued reliance on fossil fuels. In the U.S., we're already moving away from coal and other fossil fuels, and we see immediate health benefits from doing so. And so even though some of these other countries are deploying fossil fuel infrastructure, they're also investing heavily in renewables because they want to avoid some of those immediate health impacts as well.
We should mention anybody wants to find out about the coalition or the campaigns. Is there some way they can catch up on that?
Yes, so we have, of course, websites, and we're on social media, so you can find us at climateactioncoalition.org.
Thank you very much for being with us, Quinton Zondervan.
Thank you.
We'll have more news in just a moment.